I want to tell you a crazy story of an entrepreneur. I want you to follow along because I'm really curious what you would do if you were him. Ready? Okay, his name is Zhao. He's the founder and CEO of Sandbox VR. They sell virtual reality experiences in retail locations. Now, 1 year after he started the company, virtual reality became a taboo topic, meaning no venture capital firm wants to invest in company in virtual reality. His company was running out of money. If you were him, what would you do? Option 1, shut down the company. Option 2, burning your own life savings to be saved for years. He chose option 2. He went all in with his life savings. Eventually, he found early success, meaning the location works, he's expanding from Hong Kong to Silicon Valley. He's raising new rounds, things are going great. He signed multiple multi-year leases with new locations expanding all over the world. He was on top of the world. Then, COVID hit. No one's going to stores. But he already signed those leases, multiple years. What would you do? Option 1, shut down the company so you don't have to deal with all the leases, all the people, all the craziness. Option 2, clean up all the mess, continue. And you don't even know if you're going to survive. He chose option 2 again, which means he had to lay off most of his team, shut down most of the locations, begged the people who he signed lease with to restructure all his debt. He even had to file a Chapter 11. It was painful. Eventually, he stayed long enough to survive the COVID. He's now expanding into more locations than ever, raised more money than ever. He's raising a total of $116 million of venture capital. He's now profitable in a lot of the stores already. It was a crazy story. Okay, guys, is he optimistic, stubborn, or just plain crazy? Do you feel like you have to be this crazy in order to be as successful as him? I will let you be the judge if you hear more of his stories. Hopefully, regardless of what you choose, he can offer you a little bit of inspirations. Let's get started. If you like the video, please subscribe. I'm just getting started, so that means below. This is Zhao. I'm super happy to have Zhao today for our interviews. Zhao is the CEO of Sandbox. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Just so that everybody knows, can you explain what Sandbox do and how long have you been running the company?
Yeah, so Sandbox offer the most socially immersive full body VR experience you can get, and you can only get them in our retail locations. So today we have about 27 locations spread worldwide, and our goal is to get to over 100 locations in the next 2 years. So the company started back in 2016 when VR just really blossomed, and we were one of the VR companies to try to make our mark at that time.
2016, I thought VR was maybe it's the beginning of VR back then, right? It's not like it's everywhere. People talk about it all the time.
Catalyst, I would say, is the acquisition of Oculus by Facebook,
Mm.
because that was a very strong signal that VR was like on its path to turning into a consumer product. So if that was true for us, we see VR as a brand new medium, because everything that we've ever interacted with from digital entertainment is through like a flat screen, 2D flat screen. But VR is the first time ever that you could actually be inside the experience. So for us, it's an analogy is the first time people saw like black and white moving pictures, like 100 years ago.
That,
And
when you first saw VR, were you like instantly convinced, where it took you a while to get to know the technology and then say, I'm going to commit myself to VR?
when we first tried it, I thought it was really bad. I thought that, oh man, there's a lot of things that's not ready with it. There's a lot of friction of use. But at the same time, is even if that's true, the foundational experience could be really good. And to me, that's like very exciting, because that's when you want to be part of it. It's when, everything is just not really working and people are still trying to figure it out, but the underlying experience you get is so magical you can't get anywhere else. There's something here.
So were you, when you first saw VR, then were you a founder of other company? You were developing games yourself?
Yeah, my DNA is game development. I've been doing it, gosh, for over 20 years. And before VR, we launched PC mobile games. And I ran a studio of 40, completely bootstrapped. And yeah, and that did pretty well. And then until it didn't. And then when VR first came, I was like, whoa, this is like a brand new platform. But also, it was like a brand new journey for me to really jump to something new. I would say the biggest learning example is we've done mobile games, and mobile is very competitive. And
Mm.
what I learned about mobile is you cannot build anything that's popular today, because by the time you launch it 9 months later, it's going to be old news. So you have to be able to build content or games that people would want 1 or 2 years from now.
I
So we
see.
took that learning and was with the VR company. Hey, how can we build something that people would want 2 years from now, 2 to 5 years from now?
I see. And then after you have the idea, what did you do to turn that into a sandbox?
When I first started, I actually didn't have any. I
Uh
just knew
huh.
how to build games. So I was at Hong Kong at the time, and I was very lucky. I met some really good friends, and I said, "Hey, I want to build a VR company, but I want to build it faster. I would need some additional, some help with funding. Look, you might lose everything if you bet with me,
Hmm.
but if it works, then I think we can all win." And fortunately, I was able to convince like 8 good friends to like chip in, and that's
Mm.
when, before it was called Glow, but that's when essentially Sandbox VR was founded. And at that time, I just told them, look, we're just gonna start and build something on the headsets first, right?
Mm.
So 3 4 years ago, it was like there were three main headsets with the PSVR, it was the Oculus Rift, and it was the HTC Vive. So that's what we did. So we started building games on the headset. So the lowest
I see.
friction, like just the headset's like a console. We're a game developer. Very natural progression. Build a game on a headset and see how that does. But I think in about 2 months during game development, I'm like, God, this really sucks because I'm tethered to a computer. So the first generation of VR is these headsets is wired in. So you're stuck in a
Mhm.
computer, you're in a very small space, or you have to install like motion tracking cameras around your living room. It's just like annoying. So we took that philosophy. It's like, does VR has to be like this? Like inside VR, I'm just a floating head with floating joysticks. Isn't VR supposed to be like Ready Player One or The
Mhm.
Matrix?
Mhm.
So that's when we started setting out, hey, we should build something that we believe that all people would want, not just like people that's already in, right? Build for the future. So we believe that future is deep immersion in VR. And we work backwards. To do that, you cannot just have a singular headset. You have to utilize different technology layer. You have to create like actual motion tracking cameras to be able to pinpoint your body to get full body VR. You want to add haptics to it to create a much more immersive experience. And if you're going to use the full body, that means that you cannot just build on top of consumer headsets. You actually have to build from the ground up. And we're like, oh crap, if we do that, this doesn't exist in the home. We're game developers. Like, we don't want to build in retail. Like, we know nothing about retail. Like, retail's so unsexy. As a technology layer, like, you don't want to touch retail. But we're like, look, if we care about experience, that's where it has to live. So that's how we kind of form our thesis. It's like we ground it on experience.
How long did it took you to turn from like a game application to you want to do retail? How long does it take for you to realize that?
The realization was about 2 months in. For us, it wasn't, it was because we always wanted to figure out what people wanted for the future. And what we're building didn't feel really right. So we actually had the team was only 6 people, but we had 2 projects. So basically 3 people were on one project and me and the other person was on the other project to figure out like, hey, small bet, build a game, big bet, build a platform. I'll see what happens. So what happened was like in the end of 2016, we launched the game. It was everything as predicted. It was a top 20% selling game, and we made almost no money from it. The market
I
wasn't
see.
ready. And that's why in 2017 they called it the winter of VR,
Right.
because all of a sudden the sentiment of VR just shifted in 2017. So shit, okay, it didn't work out. So now we have to double down on the platform. That was still very exciting. We created a technology layer, but we ran out of money. The money that we raised from a group of friends, it wasn't that much. It was supposed to just last us about like 11 months so that we can get the game out. And in 2017, I tried to pitch in, ask folks again, my friends, like actual VCs, like, all right, we have this platform. I think it's going to be great. Let's make it happen. And they're like, yeah, I don't really want to do VR now.
Yeah.
So it's like that shift, it was just so dramatic. I think in a way, it reminds me of this year, of what some of the SaaS and fintech companies might be experiencing compared to the bull market of last year.
Were you
So
ever worried that maybe the winter is real, that VR is too far away? It wouldn't be like it would be like 10 years, 20 years later, and you wouldn't have time to wait. Were you ever worried about that back then?
it didn't bother me. I did. But we felt like what we created All the technology layer was there. So it wasn't like we were waiting for any technology to happen. Like
Mm,
it just wasn't built. Like the parts are there. We just had to put
mm,
them together. We have to create a good game on top of it, and that was it. Like at that time, because we didn't have much money, we were thinking of just licensing it. Like anyone that could have come in and offered us any type of money, and we would have just given away that technology and just licensed it out. You know,
mm.
but nobody wanted it, and no VCs wanted to invest in it. So, oh crap, we ran out of money. Fortunately, from my last company, I did have some life saving that I saved up. So I decided to use 95% of that life saving and
Wow.
put it back into the company. So yeah, so it was funded by the founder again. Before I did that, I actually had a really serious talk with my team. I like, gosh, we run out of money,
Uh-huh.
but I can use my life saving. But if I do this, need to make sure that you guys are all on board, because if any of you guys want to quit, I'm just going to close the company down, because we all have to work very hard for it. And not only do you have to work hard, I'm talking about working 7 days a week for the next 9 months. That's it. But look, what we're building can change history if we do it right. And if we didn't, at least we die trying. It was like going to war knowing that you're probably going to end in defeat. But because that act itself is already so worth it, yeah, might as well.
How many of your employees agree?
All of them agreed. They all rose their hand.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it was like 6 people at that time. They all rose their hands like, okay, yes, let's do it. Okay, because once that's done, it's like, okay, now the hard part comes. Now we have to work like hell. So because we couldn't, so I got the money in and I couldn't license it. So we made a big bet. We decided to bring it to the market. We decided to just go straight to customer, let the customer decide. And in 6 months, we actually did it in 4 months. We finished the technology platform. We created the zombie game, which is Deadwood Mansion of today, and then we actually built up a retail, like an open shop in the cheapest place possible in Hong Kong. So yeah, so we did it in 4 months, and then I remember when we launched it, like everyone was celebrating, but they were all sad because they knew that we did it. We showed the world that we built something, but we don't have that money. We don't have money left. We only have 2 months of money left, and it's tough. And I remembered because our product was closest to escape room. And one of my buddies built one of the first escape rooms in Hong Kong. And so we started in Hong Kong.
Huh.
And he says, Steve, like your business is probably going to lose money. I was like, why? Look, when I built it, we were one of the best. We got to 60% of our slot filled out. Like, do the math. You get 60% of the slot filled out. Even if you get 70% of the slot filled out, you won't be able to make enough money to support the whole company. And then it doesn't make sense. And for us, it was 60% for 2 months and it dropped to 50, 40, then 30. Same thing's going to happen to you. Why don't you just save the money? Don't do this. I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. Let's just see. It's this level of stubbornness. So the crazy thing was this: we launched it, people saw it, they're like, what the hell is this product? No one's seen this before. This is not
Huh.
just native to Hong Kong. Like what we built has never been done in the world, because we start with a full body experience. That is very rare already. And
Oh, so
second,
from day one, it was entire, even including legs
oh
included.
yeah, it was completely full body. And second of all, we built experience around interacting with your friends. We are the
Mm.
first location based company to do that, where, look, it's not about shooting zombies, it's about how you talk to your friend. You got to physically interact with them. So it creates a lot of social experience. And then the third part is after you're done, we create a video that you can take home. No one in the world has done that. And even to this day, no one has really replicated what we have.
So the
And
video was from day one.
the video came about because of like constraint. That's one of the core lessons that we learn as entrepreneurs is work within constraint, because constraint creates innovation that's not possible. So what was our constraint? Our constraint was, okay, you rent a place, the more foot traffic, the more expensive it is. It's very
Mhm.
simple. But how do you get people to share your product so that you don't have to rely on foot? We know escape room does pictures, but that's like boring and it's been overdone. So we're like, why don't we do videos? And why don't we do videos where we split between real life and VR? No one has seen this before. And why don't we, after we're done with their experience, we just let them download it on the iPhone or Android? How do we bring foot traffic instead of needing foot traffic? Because I don't have enough money to pay for expensive location, right?
Mm.
We got a place with broken pipes and no foot traffic on the 16th floor in Hong Kong. So we were the first to actually create that product. And then my friend's like, okay, Steve, you got to get 60% occupancy. We didn't get 60%. We got 100%, 100 days in a
Wow.
row.
Even from the first day, it was 100%, and then
Yeah,
every day after that.
yeah, 100%. These were numbers no one ever seen before. So we're like, holy fucking shit! Like we made it, and that's the thing. That was actually I thought, oh, we're done. No, there's just so much work after that. But that gave us a breather because we actually created something that had like product market fit. But then that's when I realized how tricky it was with fundraising because then you start talking to VC, then they start having other doubts like, okay, great, this works in Hong Kong because Hong Kong has 7 million
Mm.
people. Even though we took one of the oldest building with no foot traffic, this will never work in the US. So we got the money from Alibaba, Gobi, they were our earliest backer. And we took that concept and we brought it to Silicon Valley. So basically, it's just proving naysayer wrong at every stage of your business.
So after Hong Kong, the second city was already Silicon Valley.
We had to bring it to a bigger market. We had to make our stance. And what bigger market can you bring it if it's not the heart of Silicon Valley where technology is, right? But that was like the journey of being like an entrepreneur, is especially venture backed, is you have to prove different naysayer wrong. In the beginning, it was like, look, we think this is the future. We can build this platform. Okay, we built this platform. Next, it's like this platform can become something that consumer wants. People's like, no, I don't think that's true. Then we actually built an actual product, and consumer came in 100 days in a row, 100% booked out. Then the other naysayers, this is only going to work in Asia. You would never have this work in the US where the density of population is much lower. Then we launched in San Mateo. You know anything about San Mateo? It's not that dense. We went to a family mall because they wanted something that's brand new. They gave us space for free. It was off the corner of the mall, but they're like, yeah, go test it out. We launched it, and people came in drove. Same thing. But what we found was interesting was like some of the people that made bets in VR, that tried a lot of VR product, before they went to our store, they're like, yeah, we tried everything VR before. I don't think location VR is going to work. There's nothing that excites us because they see other options. And then when they came to Sandbox and they played it and they come out of it, like most of them were like, whoa, I usually get dizzy playing VR. I don't get dizzy when I play in yours.
Mm.
Well, I can't believe you can create a product like this. It's so immersive. So that's when we pitched to Silicon Valley VCs. And fortunately, Mark Andreessen came to the Hillsdale Mall one day along with Andrew Chen, and they tried it out. It was a Sunday afternoon. They were on the flip flops, wearing shorts and t-shirts, and they tried it out. I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. This is like becoming the new movies. That's what we're heading towards.
I
This
see.
can replace. I don't think replace,
Yeah,
but it's
totally.
just a new foundational experience.
New
But it's
format, yeah.
new format is actively engaging. It's not passive. You can create your own outcome, and the content itself is so social and it's so shareable, and it's built around shareability. Yeah. So they came in. They took a big bet on us, and they did our Series A, and
And what year was that?
that was 2018.
Yeah.
So 2016 was like figuring out our footing. We were still doing like consumer games and we're still building a platform. 2017 was taking the platform to the first demo space in Hong Kong. And 2018 is having a physical store in Silicon Valley. Yeah, so from 2018 to 2020, early 2020, it was like just growing. So we went from one location in the US to 7. So it was just about expansion, growing a
That's really
team,
quick.
building it out. And we're like, yeah, everything's going well. What could stop us? And then in early 2020, COVID came.
That's
And
crazy.
and yeah, we're like, what the hell's going on? The one thing that no one ever expected, that hasn't triggered in the last 100 years, that had the most dramatic impact on retail. We lost, we didn't even lost 100% of our revenue. We lost over 100%. We have negative run rate because people, it was not like making zero. We made negative. Like, how does that even happen? Because we
Oh.
have people that book ahead. We actually have to refund them. You lose 105% of your revenue, gone, just like that.
But you still have to pay the rent for the location, I'm
We
assuming,
had to
right?
pay
For the
the
retail
rent.
location.
We had a big team because we built out our content and platform team. We had an operational team. We had stores. We had the headcounts at the stores. And we were raising our Series B. Meaning anything about when you're raising a new round is just timing it. It's okay, we got some runway. Let's go for the
Yeah.
next round for the next growth. Yeah, we had 2 months of runway left. And we lost
So
100%.
but at that time you were raising Series B and then COVID hit while you were raising.
Yeah, so it was a drag on process. We did it when we have about 6 months. So try to get at least 6 months of fundraising. So we were pitching for the first 2 months. And then what happened was COVID came. It came slightly gradual. So we kept pitching until that one day it's like, what's the point of pitching? No one's going out. All the stores you had to shut down, government mandated. And then I just remember the team was just like, you could just imagine everything that we built is, look, it's going to be gone. That's it. It's done. No one can come out of COVID. We don't have money. We also
Right.
have debt. Like, it's just not going to happen. The debt is more than the amount of money we had in the bank. So we utilize debt because we have retail build out. But the
Crazy.
debt, but we also have like payables, right? Because you plan the future around that. The payables plus the debt is just supersede the cash we have. But the debt's going to pile on because you have all these stores with rent that you're going to have that's being accrued every month. Yeah, so that was COVID. So yeah, we're probably not going to make it.
What were you thinking? Were you always thinking it's gonna work? Were you ever wondering maybe you should just quit at that time?
Yeah, we're pretty stubborn. I feel like we quit when you're like basically all beaten up. At least fight until the end. I
Mm.
feel like, look, okay, we know, look, there's like this big Goliath that's coming, and you're probably not gonna make it. But I think at least we should try to fight it. So that's when we had to make really tough decisions. We laid off 80% of our team, and
Was that the first layoff you ever done?
I done. Yeah, it was pretty much the first big layoff that we ever done. Yeah, I done it in my last company, but it was never to this scale. But the hard part wasn't the people you let go. That's really hard already. But as a company, like after you lay off this many people, you can imagine some of the folks lost pretty much all the people in the division, right?
Oh, I see. Yes,
Some of the
that's right. That's
people
right.
lost a lot of the good friends, and then those that stayed is the morale is at an all-time low. So like as an executive, it's kind of like your job to figure out how to make sure that they stay motivated, and it's very tough. No more sugarcoating. You gotta realize what battle we're fighting and have very clean and concrete step of getting out of it because they don't.
What were your steps back then? Because you don't know how long COVID is gonna last. How do you came up with a plan?
So we it's a multi-pronged plan. So it took some time, but it's a very focused plan. It required everyone's help. So it required the investor to chip in money, existing investor, because new ones wouldn't come in, obviously. It requires our banks that hold our debt to be able to defer it, right, in a very long period of time. And then with the landlord, like we couldn't convince them because they're dealing with all the other retail folks.
Ah,
So
that's right.
that we have to utilize Chapter 11. We got to
I
go through
see.
Chapter 11 to restructure our debt. There's just no way around it. So we created this plan with all the stakeholders, and then everyone knows about the plan, and everyone agrees to the plan. And I share that plan very clearly with our team. This is what everyone's willing to do. We get some money from investors. The bank's going to push off the debt for a very long time. We're going to go through Chapter 11 because we needed that protection. And then we're going to move this forward. We're going to endure for, hey, it could be as low as 8 months or 18 months, but we're going to try to endure for the full 18 months. And during this time, this is what we're going to do. Defocus on product operations, defocus on building things that we were meant to build, the really important things. And just when time goes right, we can reopen the stores again. We can go through franchising, and we'll slowly build up our revenue, but keeping the team very lean so that there's a point in time where the revenue could supersede the cost of capital of using for operations. So we can be breaking even. So everything's laid out. And then we started executing. Everyone agreed. Fortunately, we got great investors. The banks were good. The lenders were good. Chapter 11 was tough, but we did it anyway. And it was just execution, just very tough execution. No second thought, just very clear, very precise outcome that you want to get, and
Mm.
just fight for it. And
Were
we
you still focusing on? Sorry, were you still focusing on the retail location during that time, where you were doing something different?
Oh, it was a retail, like every facet of it. Like for the retail location, we had to convince the landlord to basically withhold rent while we couldn't open our stores. We had to convince
Ah, I
landlord
see.
that, look, you can keep our space back because we filed Chapter 11 to take our location, but if you believe in us, then we need a new type of rent structure moving forward. So we actually was able to convince the 7 landlords to restructure the rent with us. It was very tough. Like the landlord was like, look, in the end of the day, it was a great, like Sandbox is a great product, right? It's not because of us. This is because of COVID. Just imagine people are stuck in their home. They will want to come out and play with their friends when they can. So we're just biding our time. That's it. So we just got money from investors. We can do it. Just give us that time, give us that space. And the landlords are reasonable. It's a very reasonable, practical approach. Everything we do is very reasonable. And they agreed. And fortunately, in early 2021, the vaccination was announced.
And things to recover.
Yeah, it's tough because most of our stores in California, anything about California, they're not business friendly.
Right.
Like a lot of retail stores were shut for a long time. Like our LA store was shut for 12 months in a row. Our store in Austin was just shut down for 2 months before it can reopen again. So it was very difficult. But around quarter 1 of 2021 is when retail opened up slowly, but it was slowly opening up. And my gosh, they were gushing in. People wanted to go out and people wanted to have a great time with their friends. And Sandbox became that destination for them.
Got back in 2021. That's awesome.
Oh,
That
they
story.
got back
Crazy.
really fast. But as a team, we're different. We've been through the worst of pandemic. We're very disciplined, very focused, very careful on how we spend our money. So we look at our business like, okay, let's make sure we don't do a lot of stuff. Let's just do very little stuff, but the stuff that matters. So for us, it's like we don't have a lot of capital. Let's figure out how we can start signing leases so we can grow. That doesn't cost us that much money. And fortunately, there's some landlords that's able to pay for our build out. So we started growing organically because that's the only way to do it. But we were very focused on our intent. And we built product features that actually maximizes our ability to scale in terms of people sharing the videos. We improve our marketing. Our conversion rate became much higher. And then we optimized our labor costs. And then we also made our product much more reliable. And content was redone so that it's a lot better to play. And all of this actually made the margin of our business phenomenal. Like before, we saw Starbucks as the cream of the crop in terms of margin. If you're doing retail business, it's about margin. And we thought Starbucks, that's where we want to go. Today,
Yeah.
on average, our margin is double Starbucks on average.
Starbucks has a lot of leverage on the location. Is that how you guys are able to do that?
Location just one way. We modified our product to make the experience much better. We made shareability much better. We made the content something that is even more social, and we made these videos even more shareable. So
That's
it
awesome.
was like a slew of product. And we become much better at marketing. We know how to cross market across different platforms. Instead of Instagram, TikTok is blowing up for us because the video resonates so well there. And the thing is, because we've been so good about keeping our margin we take all these lessons, like it just all adds up. So there's no one golden bullet. It was just a ton of silver bullets.
That's awesome. You mentioned that previously you were probably doing a lot of things, but then now your culture has been more focused. Can you tell me more about how that works?
Yeah, so we learned that it's very easy to just build stuff, especially if you're doing a venture backed startup and you have a certain amount of funding and you feel like you have to get a certain amount of engineering folks. Sometimes you could be building stuff that might not be very important now. So for us, it's like, how do you make sure that what you're doing is not just important now, but can have an outsized outcome for the future? It's not many, usually just one or two things in every department, but you have to really diagnostic like what those things are. Nowadays, like our big focus is on how do we turn Sandbox into a platform, not just a retail business, something that you can play in Sandbox and can continue on other devices, so that's interoperable. You can
Could
put that
work.
shit on your mobile so that in the future it's not just about ticket sales, it's about virtual goods. Being embodied in full body VR is amazing. So it's like we're trying to double down on that. So we realized, okay, if that's the future we want to build, there's a lot of things you can build, but we focus on one thing, which is the foundational technology layer, which is streaming, wireless streaming. We didn't go with an all-in-one headset where it's still localized to the headset. We want to stream it, and that's tough. But we knew that was going to be a foundational layer, so we put all our eggs in it and just double down on it. We thought we are going to get it done by next June. It's already live today.
Oh wow! So you ahead of schedule. You
Yeah.
mentioned that you are stubborn. Like first time during the VR winter, also during the time the cold. Were you always like this? Where you are so convinced about the idea that you can stick to it?
Yeah, for better for worse. Sometimes it's not a good thing, and I definitely been told like, hey, sometimes you could be open to more feedback. I think stubbornness, the underlying thing is trying to develop truth in the world. I think to me, like my belief is full immersion is such a phenomenal experience that people are going to gravitate towards. It's like you get to become someone else and go anywhere that you can go in the world. And imagine doing that with your friends. Like we know that to be a truth. So we build towards that. So that's what got us out of the winter is because there is a part of me that believed that this is what something people wanted. Now, we didn't get exactly what we wanted. So when back in 2017, The first game that we created was a zombie game because we grew up on Resident Evil. We played it in our console. We played Left 4 Dead, which is an amazing zombie game for the PC. And yeah, we're gonna bring that in. And then when we launch it, just like people that played Resident Evil, it's gonna be mostly the male demographics, right? But when we launched it, it was actually more female that came in. And we're like, well, what the hell is going on? So the philosophy was correct. Like people wanted it, but it wasn't the demographic that we expected. So we asked them, and they said that it didn't feel like a game. It felt like real life. So we're like, oh yeah, right. When you're full body immersed, you forget you're inside simulation. That's what it creates. We don't have a pure gaming platform. We have a consumer product. So even though that foundation nugget of thinking about the future is grounded in some truth, as you get there, you might not get exactly how you foresee it. But that's where that you would say stubbornness comes from, is like these nuggets of truth that you have. And obviously they get shaped over time, but that's what drives Sandbox forward.
So when you initially talked to this VC, and I mean they're probably more experienced, they're big names, and they say this is not going to work. Were you ever questioning maybe your vision is not feasible?
All the time, all the time. It's hard because sometimes these VCs, it's their job, right, to analyze companies, and sometimes they do give pretty good feedback. When we first started, I was like, look, Steve, I don't see how this could be a scalable model. I don't see how you can get margin that's even close to Starbucks, right? It's like the tech is so heavy. You only can fit like this many people in a space and you need so many staff to run it. And there's some truth to that. But here's the thing, like, that's what we're trying to solve. Like over time, we reduced the cost of tech substantially. The amount of people needed to services has dropped. But the biggest thing that we didn't expect was how strong people wanted to play this. Our ticket price increased by 2x and even 3x over time. And it's not because we increased it, was because we were just sold out during the weekend and we readjusted ticket price so the demand can be balanced out.
I see.
Like,
So when other people, let's say, when the VC question you, sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. So I guess I'm trying to understand the way of your thinking. So if the VC gives you a doubt, you would think that is a valid question, but you wouldn't just think it's unsolvable, right? You were trying to frame this as a solvable question and figure out a solution to solve that.
That's absolutely it. I see it as a challenge, right? And I think there's merit to the question. And sometimes they actually give things that I haven't thought about. And I'm pretty thankful for that. Obviously, I'll be more thankful if they invested. But look, their advice is amazing. I think that's very helpful. Every round that we do, I always feel like I always learn something new about the company. Because this is really the first time you're showing your companies to a lot of other people who knows about this space or who can have a very unique perspective. But that's part of the game of venture. It's just that I feel like every time you fundraise, we're just answering different questions. No one doubts Sandbox now if this is a product market fit. It's already product market fit. No one doubt how sustainable is this business. Like we ran our first store like 4 to 5 years now. It's doing better than ever. Repeatability is going up. Now it's okay. What does it mean for Sandbox to be a platform? How big can this be? Can this be the next major computing platform? So it's just like having bigger bets now. But nonetheless, it just rhymes, but it's the same thing. It's just trying to build out that future and trying to solve these challenging questions that is being proposed.
A lot of my funder friends right now, they're facing challenges, raising, sometimes laying off people. So how do you keep yourself motivated?
I think it's very hard to be pumped all the time. I think what really helps in work and outside of work is having a very clear path, like a very clear path of where you want to get to. No bullshit, very clear path, having the worst assumption possible, assuming things just don't go well, but you can get through this path. And then making sure this path is communicated. For us, we did it through the whole company, but definitely with your closest leaders. And making sure that you're not this path that they're all in agreement with. That alignment, it's very important because you're rowing a small boat now and everyone needs to row in the same direction. If not, it's going to be game over. So
were there ever times, I'm just curious, were there ever time that you yourself don't know, you don't have a direction yet, or maybe you're trying to figure out the direction? Did that ever happen?
all the time.
So then,
What's needed first is, as a founder, you need to create space. You need to make sure your calendar is cleared up because I think it's very important to sit down and think and write and ask questions. And you can't do that if you're packed with meetings and stuff like that. So first, create that space and figure out, okay, what do we need to do that's best for the company? in the least amount of effort possible. And from there, just start like figuring out, okay, could this work? Could that work? And you can play devil's advocate. So, hey, what if we do this and to defeat that? And then once you have something, then you have people that you're closest to, either in the company or your board, and you run it by them and then ask them to challenge that. And then you do it a few times, luckily for us, then we're like, wait a minute, okay, this feels really good. By doing all these things, I think we're gonna get there. And then once you have that, then you communicate it with your team and you see how they feel about it. And fortunately for us, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then once you have that, then you start talking about that plan and that path for the next 1 year. And it might change. Definitely ours changed. We actually thought franchising was going to be the major kick starting for us. No, it turned out to be corporate. Like corporate stores, company owned, was a major catalyst for us. But directionally, it was the same thing. We focused on the right stuff, and we gotten out of it. Like we did everything we planned. We wanted to be double the margin of Starbucks. Got it. We want to triple our stores. Got it. We want to break even as a company. Got it. Yeah.
So it sounds like you tend to commit to something for a little bit and then see if that works. If not, you change. So you, instead of trying to wait for the best solution to come, is that kind of your way of thinking?
It wouldn't be a big change. There's a lot of upfront time spent on trying to figure out what that plan is. And that plan is like really validated because once you do it, you have to execute. It's like, okay, we make this plan. Let's just go all in and just double down on it. And generally, even if we stray from the plan, it's not like a 180 pivot or anything like that. It's usually edging in one direction or edging in a different direction and things like that. But even in our plan, we have A/B scenarios. It's not like just, it's a branching path. And then branching path have like variables that we look at, right? For us, it's like, it's grounded on margins. What gets us the best margin? Okay, it's grounded on our capital use. It's grounded on shareability, right? For us, it's like everything that we do must improve the margin of the store. If you cannot create a clear plan to do it, don't do it. Because margin equates to money that we can put back into our bottom line. And for us, it's about surviving. So that's absolutely clear, right? Yeah. So AB is a branching path, but it's usually directionally, like we see the island like there. So we're just going to figure out like left and right, how do we get to that island?
That's super helpful. I'm also really curious about your calendar tool. Sounds like you're saying you have a, what is your style of allocating your time? Have you find something that really works really well for you?
For me, it works really well. Generally, I do a lot of one-on-ones, usually with folks that are my exec team. Sometimes I'll do one-on-one if there's one-off projects that I need to be hands-on in. And then usually the rest of the week is pretty open. And it gives me time to react to anything in the company or I need more time in. Or sometimes it gives me time for me to sit down and think and talk to other people and just to figure out stuff.
So you sounds like you allocate a block of time just to think every week consistently. Is that kind of the
Yeah, it's not really allocated. I just generally try to keep like Wednesday to Friday pretty open. My Monday and Tuesday are really heavy on meetings.
Changing gears a little bit, maybe let's talk about you as a founder. Do you always know that you want to start a company?
No, I just think it came from wanting to build stuff. I built games. I started building games when I was 12. Fortunately, there's a big industry behind that. I just picked a hobby that turned out to be very lucrative. And then over time, it's like just grabbing a group of people to build games with me. And it became a company. And then I started managing people, started learning, and just to go from there.
What kind of things drives you right now? Like at this point, is it more about going public? Is it more about making more people use Sandbox?
Yeah, internal. There's internal and external. Internal now is look, we've been through a really tough battle navigating COVID. Like I have teammates that actually went to the ER because of how stressed out they were. We have people that are taking medication. So now internally, I just want to make sure at least the team feels good. Like they're happy in their job and that they're motivated and they're working with people they're excited about. That's very important to me. Externally, it's really about is continue what we're doing right now, just scaling stores, but building the platform layer. But this time, it's just being very focused and being very mindful of where we want to go and having a very clear path of how to get there. That's pretty much it. Everything is really mapped out. Like all the stuff that we plan or plan half a year, 1 year in advance. At least we try to do that.
So right now you already finished planning for next year.
Yeah, we're raising right now, but the company is already profitable. It's EBITDA profitable. So
wow, congrats.
We even have a plan where we don't raise. So again, it's a lot of branching path right now. Or if we don't raise the venture round, we can do other types of financial instruments. So we have a lot to play with. And then if we don't raise, we already modeled in what that growth is going to look like. Everything is prepared ahead of time. No more surprises. The last big surprise we had was the pandemic. That was too painful. So moving forward, I minimized my surprise.
How do you keep yourself sane during the COVID? How did you navigate that situation yourself?
No, I try not to get pressured by people. So I guess there's a few things. There's a few groups of people, either as customers or your team or maybe your board. So we try to get alignment. We try to like talk through some of these things to build alignment. Once there's alignment, then there's probably going to be less pressure, right? This is how we're going to treat our customer. This is how the team is going to behave. Like just thinking through these things. And so that's on autopilot, right? But for myself, I'm always grounded on going to the gym. Going to the gym is my way to de-stress. So
Oh, interesting.
nothing exciting. That's kind of it. But honestly, I built my schedule around situations where I'm not very reactive. Like we're very proactive about things. We plan things ahead, and we plan multiple scenarios, so we don't get that surprise. And that keeps me a good night's sleep. Even though there's stuff that worries me, we think about it. We plan ahead for them.
Oh, that's really interesting. So, were you always a planner before?
It's a byproduct of having gone through the pandemic. Is because the pandemic was the most chaotic moment for us. Like the startup wasn't easy to build up. Like you think we are a VR company plus retail plus platform on one,
Right.
while being
Yeah.
in Hong Kong, having no money and without a big team, and
Yeah.
trying to make that work and to get to Andreessen. Then the pandemic came. It's like the pandemic made everything before that very easy. So it's so chaotic for us. It's like the only way to chaos is order, and the only way to order is to plan for it, right?
What is your planning process now? Like for the next year, let's say, what will be your process?
Yeah, so generally I would write things down like for a year or two, like what we want to do and what does it look like, what are the outcomes we want to see, and then we trickle down to like OKRs. So we have quarterly OKRs, at least me with the leaders, and sometimes leaders they would do OKRs with their team, and then that's basically it. OKR doesn't capture everything that we have to do. It just captures the thing I care about, the things that I think would have the most outsized outcome for the company. I was like, do whatever you guys want, but as long as you get these things done, that's it. And sometimes it's not too tough. Sometimes it just needs to get done. But sometimes it's really tough, like getting wireless streaming. And I was like, look, figure out like who are the people you need, what are the outcomes you want, and let's just put a date on it, and then let's make it happen. If you don't get it this quarter, at least you tried your best. We'll just kick it off the next one. I'm not like super strict on these things, but we just know what are the important things to focus on.
That's really helpful. What will be your advice for people who are raising now, or who's just started a company now? This is like economic downturn here.
Honestly, if you're starting a company right now, I'm a little bit envious because there are a few inflection points. I think starting a company is amazing. Back in the late 90s, it was like the beginning of internet. The '08, it wasn't a financial crisis. It was the blossom of mobile computing. And then it happens every 10 years. Like now, it's like, I still call it now, is AI. It's phenomenal. Like you start a company, especially starting AI, I just think it's like one day everything could be connected to AI. In any case, that's just starting a company more generally.
I guess 2016 was the VR, right? Maybe it was Solution back then, but that was the peak. 2016.
Yeah, I mean, I think VR has its place, but I feel like the pillars of technology, I don't think it's one of the biggest pillar technology. I think it has its place. Yeah, I mean, I think for now, I think it's, look, startup's going to be hard. If you're like first time founder, just understand that you're probably not going to have a life. Just fight it because that's what it is. If you truly believe in that future, but be also mindful and try to build out that truth. What is that truth to you? And but strongly help, but also at the same time be open to feedback and really shape that truth. It's like a rock. You want to turn that like rough rock into a smooth pebble.
What's your thought on the metaverse from Facebook? Were you a fan?
Metaverse really is such a broad term that could be misused. It's essentially a collection of virtual world that is interconnected and is real time. That's happening, right? We've seen elements of that in gaming already, and it's just going to get bigger. So if you take away that terminology, it is natural. We're going to get bigger games that you can cross-platform, that can have like maybe one day 10,000 people playing simultaneously. It's all possible. And
Would you bet money on Meta? Would you buy their stock right now?
I don't buy any stocks right now.
Do you think like Oculus will be the platform that everybody will be using?
Even iPhone has Android, so I don't think anyone owns Metaverse, but I think I'm actually very excited people are moving towards that direction, because there will be a collection of companies that will make a huge dent. And for us, we see our own path to how we fit into the metaverse. So we do see a future happening, and we do hope that that future is where Sandbox can be the next Ready Player One.
People are having debate over Apple's going to do AR, Facebook's doing VR. What's your thought? Which one would you take the bet on?
I think they serve different use cases. I think AR amplifies the real world, so you can see training, education working really well. But if you want to transform into a whole new world, that's VR. You want gaming, and that's gaming entertainment, right? And that's what we want to double down on.
Okay. Last question. So you're now in Shanghai, or you're typically based in Shanghai. So you have a remote team, I'm assuming, right now.
I have a remote team. We have a headquarter in Hong Kong, and we have folks all over the world, but we also have a headquarter here in the Bay Area too.
So what's your thought on the remote return to office debate?
When I started my last company back in 2005, it was remote. We made remote work. I learned that certain folks should be in the same office, and certain folks doesn't have to be. We've been practicing it way before the pandemic, and I'm still a big believer of it.
Can you be more specific? What kind of team should be together? What kind of team can be separate?
Yeah, so usually if you're a creative team, I believe creative needs to have some type of interactions, and usually physical interactions are really good for creativity. But if you talk about development, yeah, it can be remote, right? In fact, I think there's a benefit to that too. Because there's a lot of inefficiencies with being in the actual. We just hired a CFO. He just told me that he would drive 3 hours every day to and from work. Such a waste of time. Even for us, fortunately for Hong Kong, it's such a small city, like having an office is actually okay. But even that, we tell people like, look, if you feel more productive working from home, work from home. In the end of the day,
what are the teammates in your company that's like creative? Do you pull them together? So that as a result?
And not wholly too, content development, but not everyone in content development needs to be together. Artists can work more individually, certain programmers can work more individually. But for us, the game designers have to be together, and they have to be with some of the producers and some of the lead developers.
Those people are in the Hong Kong office, basically, and everyone else can be remote. I see.
Anyone can be remote, yeah.
So you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, exactly.
Both. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know me, like I'm living and breathing it. That's how we done it during the pandemic. We're like a testament to it too, because we're a retail startup that survived the pandemic, and we serve it as a remote company.
That's true. Yeah. That's awesome. Last sentence. What is the most important quality do you think an entrepreneur should have?
Yeah, I say be curious. I think before you dive in, just really look around, see what's out there. And you don't look around just what's out there. You also want to look internally, because you want to see how your DNA can fit into what you're building, right? Because not every founder is meant for every type of company. So learn more about yourself, learn more about the world, and learn more how you can fit there and start changing the world.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. This is really fun chatting.
All right, thanks.